We are getting pictures of Kim Jong Un and his first moments in Singapore. The North Korean leader arrived via plane on an Air China flight that we saw land at Singapore airport moments ago. We also saw a tweet from the Singapore foreign minister welcoming Kim Jong Un. So we now have confirmation that the North Korean leader is on Singapore soil. Of course, all of this is a day and a half ahead of his planned historic meeting with the U.S. President Donald Trump. They're watching live pictures right now. It's middle of the afternoon local time in Singapore, 3:39 p.m. Mr. Trump, as we speak, is in the air, scheduled to arrive in a few hours. Kim Jong Un, the North Korean leader, is, for his part, on his way, we believe, to his hotel. We know that he's going to be meeting with the Singapore Prime Minister. The Singapore Prime Minister will also be meeting with the U.S. President, but that will occur on Monday, so a day before the meeting. And remember, this is happening in Singapore because Singapore actually has diplomatic relations with both countries. Let's go to Paula Hancock, our South Korea correspondent in Singapore for the summit. Paula, what do we know at this stage?
Well, Cyril, what we're seeing here is clearly that convoy that was leaving from the airport, arriving at the St. Regis Hotel. This is where Kim Jong Un was reportedly going to stay, and it would appear as though that's the case if he is in fact in that motorcade. Now, clearly, you can see the sheer number of reporters that have been camped out there for some time. You could also see there as the convoy was driving slowly into the hotel, the bodyguards running alongside. By the side of a couple of those cars. Now, clearly, we saw that in the DMZ as well when Kim Jong Un was coming to meet the South Korean President Moon Jae-in just in April. Now, we don't know for sure whether that is Kim Jong Un, but the very fact that you have those bodyguards once again running alongside the car would suggest that's the case. And certainly, the host broadcaster is saying that this is the case. So this is in the centre of Singapore, the city-state of Singapore, maybe around 10 kilometers or so from where they'll actually be meeting on Tuesday morning, the North Korean leader and the U.S. President Donald Trump. They're meeting 9 a.m. Tuesday morning. But at this point, we have heard confirmation, as you say, from the foreign minister. He tweeted a photo meeting Kim Jong Un at the airport. It appeared to be just at the steps of the aeroplane. A very smiley Kim Jong Un, a very smiley foreign minister. Clearly, this is a big moment for Singapore as well, hosting such an historic summit. Cyril?
Yeah, Paula, I'm glad you said that. I do think it's important to remind to viewers that they are witnessing history in the making, and notwithstanding the outcome of the summit, we don't know how that will end up. We don't know what will be said between Mr. Trump and Kim Jong Un. Nonetheless, the very fact that a U.S. president and a North Korean leader are going to be meeting, that in itself is historic. So you are watching footage shot just moments ago of Singapore city centre, as Paula Hancock was telling you. Paula, when is Donald Trump arriving?
He should be arriving within several hours. We know that he's in the air right now. We know he's already had his refueling stop in Crete, and he's on his way. Now, we're expecting early evening time for the U.S. president for the meeting as well with the Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien-loong. Obviously important to have that protocol as well. The North Korean leader Kim Jong Un will be meeting with him today. It's Sunday afternoon at this point, so that meeting will go ahead. The Singaporean Prime Minister meeting with Mr. Trump on Monday. So we have a day for the North Korean leader, the whole of Monday, where we have nothing on the schedule. We don't know what he will be doing, clearly preparing for what's about to happen on Tuesday, this meeting. But at this point, we don't know exactly what he'll be doing. And it's an interesting kind of summit, Cyril, the very fact that you have very few details on exactly what to expect. Usually with summits between leaders around the world, you will get some planning briefing. You will not necessarily be reporting that. It's for planning purposes, but you'll know where they're likely to be at any given moment. With this, all we know is 9 a.m. Tuesday morning, they will be meeting, that Kim Jong Un and Donald Trump will be meeting at the the Capella Hotel on Sentosa Island, which is just off the south coast of Singapore itself. So clearly chosen because it's a little easier to secure for these two leaders. But it's anyone's guess what will happen behind those closed doors. We don't even know what kind of press availabilities there will be, whether they will be giving statements. We heard from the US Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, he's hoping there will be some kind of a communique, some kind of statement between the two leaders at the end of the day. But even he said it really depends on what happens, effectively on how they get on, if they want to have something to say, or if they even have something to say by the end of the day. Cyril?
Paula, stand by for just a second. I will be bringing in Nick Robertson, our senior diplomatic correspondent who's in South Korea, in just a second. But first, I would like to recap the pictures that we have been getting out of Singapore over the last 45 minutes to an hour. And if viewers are just joining us, you are going to get a heavy diet of pictures out of Singapore and out of the approach to this summit between Donald Trump and Kim Jong Un over the next 2 or 3 days. They have started to come into us. So first, let's look at the plane that landed about an hour ago now, maybe a little less than that, at Singapore Airport. This is an Air China plane. We believe this was the plane that was carrying the North Korean leader Kim Jong Un. Everything you're seeing here is, if not unprecedented, absolutely unusual. North Korean leader Kim Jong Un there, we have reason to believe, was in that plane arriving in Singapore. Moments later, we saw a motorcade leave the Singapore airport. There again, there has been very little, in fact, no information that has been handed over to journalists, as would often be the case for big international, big diplomatic summits like this one. So we are left to make a certain number of inferences. But you see the escort, you see the cameras, and you see the official car leaving Singapore Airport with the roads blocked off. Those are the pictures that we have for now. That and a tweet by the Singapore foreign minister, who confirmed what we believe to be the case, that Kim Jong Un is now indeed in Singapore and that he has been welcomed by the Singapore authorities. Next, we go to Nick Robertson, who's standing by in South Korea. And Nick, I asked you this in the run-up to the meeting. Have you ever covered a meeting that has been, or a summit that has been potentially this important, and yet about which you had so little information?
And one that's had such an incredible drum roll, and one where both leaders show up a day early. It leaves space there for one to speculate that there might be an opportunity for some level kind of talks before they actually meet for real. That big photo opportunity on 9 a.m. On Tuesday morning. So no, I think it feels in the context of what they might achieve to be quite unprecedented. The style of it does seem to be unprecedented. President Trump comes off what was clearly a stormy G7 meeting, one that has gone not the way as he left. He's changed his mind about the United States signing that joint communique. So he's going to arrive into this perhaps with his world rocked a little bit. He went into the G7 taking a very, very tough position. He's coming to this, one would expect, with an equally tough stance. That will be the signaling for that Kim Jong Un can take away from President Trump's frame of mind at the moment, taking a very tough position with other G7 leaders. And President Trump is framing this as a one-off opportunity. You know, it's that businessman type speak, that language that says, hey, you want to do this deal? Well, you've only got one shot at it. That's what he's saying at the moment. This is a one-off deal that he thinks he can tell whether Kim Jong-un's committed to this, committed to making those historic strategic shifts in the path of North Korea, that President Trump believes he'll be able to tell that in seconds. What do we take away from his ability to read the room at the G7? He complained that Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada was in fact meek and humble, but then spoke up and was much stronger and more critical of the United States later. Is that an indication he misread that room? So, you know, there's so much uncertainty, as you say, and it all comes down, it seems, to these two men. We don't know what's on the agenda. We do know there's been a lot of work behind the scenes preparing, both sides preparing what may or may not happen, but it really comes down to the characters of these two men. And President Trump's made it very, very clear that his style on this is your opportunity, one shot. Those are the stakes.
Yeah, and the U.S. president has also made it clear that he would trust his instinct. He said he'd walk in the room and within moments, I believe he said it within a minute, he would know whether the North Korean leader was serious about denuclearizing. We'll get back to that in just a second, Nick. I want to go back to Paula. Paula, remind us why this is all happening in Singapore.
Well, there was really a question as to where it could happen. It was taking a long time to be narrowed down. The key for both the U.S. side and the North Korean side, we're told by U.S. officials, was security. They wanted to make sure that their leaders were going to be secure. And what was important from the U.S. side as well was neutrality. They wanted a neutral spot that both sides had some kind of connection to. There's a U.S. embassy here. There's a North Korean embassy here. Both countries have a connection to Singapore. And of course, as we heard from the U.S. President Donald Trump, at one point he really favored the DMZ. And it was just after the South Korean President Moon Jae-in had that summit with Kim Jong Un and stepped over the MDL, the military demarcation line, into North Korea. They stepped back. It was picture perfect. And the U.S. president said he wanted that. Maybe he did want to go to the DMZ. But the Trump administration officials were very much against that. They thought that would be showing that he is showing deference to Kim Jong Un, that he is going to the turf of the North Korean leader. And certainly you would expect that would be how it would be played to the North Korean people as well, that one of the most powerful men in the world coming to North Korea to pay deference. So really, Singapore was a neutral spot, a secure spot that both sides were comfortable with.